Welcome to the Customer Smarts podcast, where you'll discover smarter ways to deliver customer experiences. I'm your host, Justin Stafford. Over the years, the remit of CMOs has continued to grow and become more complex. So I wanted to get some insight into what makes a great CMO and what will the future of the role look like. My guest in this episode is Salesforce CMO of Australia and New Zealand, Leandro Perez. Not only is Leandro a CMO himself, but one of his core customers is also CMOs. So he can provide a really unique perspective into what makes a great CMO and what the future of the role looks like. So in this episode, we're going to explore the biggest challenges CMOs are facing right now, the common traits of the best CMOs, what a great CMO in the future will look like, and some great advice on how to approach AI in the marketing space. Welcome, Leandro. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for the invitation, Justin. Appreciate it.
I'd like to start with some of the challenges CMOs are facing. The remit continues to grow and evolve, as you know. So life as a CMO is getting, far more complex. What are some of the biggest challenges CMOs are facing right now?
So look, this is a multi-part question. It's definitely not a simple one, like you alluded to. I think like most people in business, not just CMOs, especially at the C-suite, they have to look at what's happening in the broader environment. So the global economy, the macro economy, and right now there is a lot of uncertainty. So of course, there's been political changes all around the world. We might be having some political changes right here in Australia. Then there's sort of the macro environment in terms of finances, how people and consumers are feeling, and interest rates and cost of living and inflation is affecting many people, which then ultimately impacts businesses. So with that comes uncertainty for a CMO to know, well, how much budget are they going to be able to have and deploy? What resources will they have as a team? So I think that would be number one. Sort of segueing into that then, and usually a CMO's job is to build the brand and also build demand, and there are usually pressures on the whole short-term versus long-term equation, right? So in times of uncertainty and stress, CMOs are usually asked to think a bit more short-term, but we all know that you need to be building the brand and the longer-term aspirations. But at many meeting rooms, that sort of goes out the window when, a business isn't meeting its monthly or its quarterly or its yearly number. So that's something that CMOs are thinking about. Beyond that, you mentioned the role of the CMO is expanding and changing. There are more touch points, there are more channels than ever before, whether it's websites, there's social channels, many businesses have apps, and that requires a CMO to work and collaborate with more people than ever before. And sometimes some of these channels or areas questions who's the owner, like is customer service really on the website owned by the CMO or by head of service, or is it owned by the call center? So there's that, and talent acquisition. At the moment it's pretty tight labor market, especially in Australia. We also had a lot of people come back from overseas after COVID, but then a few of them have left again. Right, especially when the borders all opened up and the opportunities started abounding. So the talent war is definitely still on. I think about that all the time. And then last but not least, something I've been thinking a lot about is how you integrate AI and agents into everything we do. Because when you're asked to do more with less, definitely people turn to technology. And this is the first time that there's a technology that doesn't just give people a little bit more productivity, but can actually do things on its own. And so an agent that can handle a big proportion of a service representative on a website. Think of the next iteration of a chatbot, an agent that can actually do something like actually physically return an item. If someone tries to do it to a local store and do the processes to do that, that means that a marketer might have an ability to do much more than they ever have without needing to ask for more resources. And that's a really exciting future.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will dive into AI a little bit later on.
I know we're going there, Justin.
It's a hot topic. It certainly is interesting that for CMOs, and also seeing that expansion from a CMO into a chief customer officer, where they're across a much broader, not just the acquisition side, but you're seeing sort of brand and marketing CMOs turn into across the customer service aspect as well. And so that's a whole new world, isn't it, for them to get their head around?
It is. for the people that know me, I didn't come up through the traditional marketing path, and I see a lot of crossover. I like to think of all the roles I do really as a business leader, and I see a lot of my peers really struggling with that, transition of yes, you might have been a marketer that historically was responsible for X, but now in a business, Y and Z and everything else needs to be done. And the question is, does the CMO want to take it? Sometimes they're asked to take it. Sometimes they're like, yeah, give me more, right? And expand. I think we're really at an opportunity now for CMOs to do much more. And I think they can be leading. I have a big narrative that I speak at many conferences about how the CMOs can become the CEOs of the future, just because we're the closest to the customer. And yeah, sure, a customer might reach out about customer service, but you could be marketing to them, you could be selling to them in that interaction as well. So there's a real blurring of the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess with that expansion of remit, you get, you have organizational silos, not in your own area, but outside of that, and you get politics that come with that as well. So, it can be really difficult when it comes to driving change. What are some of the best examples you've seen of a CMO being that agent for change in their organization?
Yeah, look, I could mention many examples right here at Salesforce, but I'll pivot to some of our customers as I've seen this, especially locally in two examples, but also across the ditch in New Zealand, which is my part of my remit as well, my territory. So first one that comes to mind is Rudy Curry. Actually, I was just with him last week at dinner. We had an event in our Sydney Tower, Salesforce Sydney Tower, and he was up. He is someone that, again, not a traditional marketer. I think he might have actually been an accountant by background. I need to check his LinkedIn.
Maybe that's a secret.
But Rudy's works at Fisher & Paykel, an amazing appliance brand out of New Zealand that now's gone global. And he has had many roles, actually. He used to own marketing, then he owned marketing and customer experience. I think his latest title is Chief Digital Officer. And he is someone that's needed to navigate, obviously, local organization. They've also been, I don't remember the name of the organization, but they're acquired recently as well. So having to work international with other stakeholders. And that means it just gets exponentially more difficult, right? But what he's been able to do is lead by example through the use of technology. So like we mentioned before, many channels can start off a service and move to something else. But something he's also tried to do is meet the rising expectations of the customer. So we all know that now, ever since Amazon made it really simple to order something online and get it delivered in the next day or the next few days, everyone expects that regardless of your industry, whether you're buying a book or, in his case, a fridge, right, which is infinitely more complicated, right? And so he's led with technology so that, when you're booking a fridge or a dishwasher being installed in your house, why does that need to be the old way? You might want to be doing that interactively through a digital channel and being offered scheduling options. You don't necessarily need to talk to someone to do that. And then when someone is coming to your home, the dreaded, we'll be there between 9 and 5 p.m. Like, well, does that mean I have to take off the whole day? Can I take calls? Can I not? And so they've implemented technology so that the field service agent, that is sort of just in time sharing with the customer where they are, tracking if they're going to be delayed, all of that kind of technology, right? And so he's done an amazing job of showing the art of the possible in the organization, being a real innovator, a trailblazer, and then bringing across the people that are needed to deliver that, which is probably why his role has changed, right? Because some of that's tech, some of that is business, and then, of course, there's the marketing side as well, because who owns the website? And you can't just put something new on there as well. So that's one example. I'll share a second, which, again, actually, I was with Rachel Powell last week. So she's now the CEO of a healthcare organization called Magentis, but she previously was the chief customer officer at Xero, the cloud subscription accounting software. And she had an interesting role because she was the first, I think, chief customer officer, which meant she owned sales, marketing, and ops. So really brought together all those functions. And she was there when Xero was a relatively unknown little sort of startup in New Zealand. And now really a global titan and a great success story out of New Zealand in terms of tech and scaling the world. I'm sure many small business owners are very familiar with Xero.
Yep,
and yeah, there you go. I many moons ago did something myself with them as well. And I think what's interesting about what she did was she kind of created this role of bringing sales, marketing, ops together, knowing that in a high tech space, you kind of need to move quickly. And the old adage of you don't want sales and marketing to be misaligned, but ops is really important because they set the targets for sales and subscription growth and where resource will be allocated. So that's another great example. So both Rudy from Fisher & Paykel and Rachel from now Magentis have been amazing people to watch throughout their career.
So when you look at the best CMOs in the business, what are some of the traits that they have in common?
Yeah, look, there's many. Again, there's not one or two things. There's probably like 10 things, but I'll try to keep it short. I say number one is thinking about the customer. So we at Salesforce say putting the customer at the center. I think so a customer-centric mindset is super important because especially now, things change, right? A customer today cares about something especially in fast-moving industries. In 12 months, they don't. So if you don't have a mindset of really understanding the customer, spending time with the customer and driving a lot of decisions through that, I don't think you're going to succeed. The second is someone that can be strategic, but a little bit visionary at the same time. So many of the best CMOs that I've seen are willing to take a bet on something, even if it's not guaranteed. Yeah. And you need to be willing to take some of those chances or swing for the fences, to use the old adage. But if you don't do that, I think you can be easily seen as non-growth and more of a cost center in an organization. And I know many of the best CMOs that I talk to do not want to be deemed, they want to be like, we're with growth, we're attached to revenue, we're growing the business, because otherwise it's a slippery slope on budget and resources. I think increasingly there's so much data available now that the transition for many CMOs that were very creative and were focused on the big campaign, but without maybe pairing that with data-driven insights and understanding, that's a miss. So I think people that, you don't have to be a data scientist. And that's why we at Salesforce have tools like Tableau and dashboarding. And now we'll talk about AI, but so that a CMO can get those insights. But it's incredibly important that you are able to articulate the return of the money that's spent, where trends are happening with the customer base. Ideally, you're actually bringing that to the C-suite and the board, because you're getting no many other departments are getting real-time interaction from customers on their website or purchase history, which you can say exactly what's happening. Now you need to be able to understand it and tell that story, which leads into the second one is the best CMOs are master storytellers, because no matter what it is you're doing, you're either asking for resources or you're defending the choices or you're talking to customers positioning a product. If you can't tell that story, and I'm not saying that you need to be a Hollywood producer here, but someone that can be articulate, trustworthy, and moves at pace, because things are changing quickly. You don't want to be telling yesterday's story today is important. And then I'll close with developers of talent, because no one's getting any younger. So by the time you've reached to become a CMO, you usually need a very strong team around you. And you've moved from potentially being a strong performer, and maybe you're the one that comes up with all the creative ideas, or you've had to justify through data. But hopefully by the time you've reached the CMO ranks, you've built a team that can do that. And you need to that's a never ending job, right? Bringing in new talent, especially as technologies change, right? I've seen many new technologies enter businesses and the CMO doesn't know who to give the project to because they don't have anyone on the team. And so that's usually when they talk to IT, and then there's misunderstandings of what's needed from a marketing point of view. So I think that last one and building that talent within your team is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things I want to dive into. So the first
Let's do it.
Storytelling. What do you have to do to tell a good story? Obviously, storytelling's part of it's the actual, the content and the brand, but also it's the internal storytelling as well. So, to pitch the big ideas, what's sort of key in pitching stuff internally as one part of the question, and the second part, telling the good story, the brand story?
Yeah, look, I think to be a good storyteller, you need to try to lean in and use your personal examples where possible. So I think the best stories are the ones that you get attached to and that you can just share some of those little finer details that don't easily come across if you weren't in the room, so to speak. And by the way, I've learned a lot from our CEO, Mark Benioff, working with him. He's a master at this, right? He'll come in, whether it's an internal all hands, a company kickoff, Dreamforce, which is our large event in San Francisco where we have millions of people tuning in online. he will bring in stories of he's just met this customer. Like he'll say, just met with the board of Disney and this is what we're doing with Disney. And he'll go, when I went to Disney, like this is what my children were doing. And so you can just picture in your mind all those things, especially if you've been there. And the person that is able to translate that into someone else's mind is really going to be able to retain their attention. And that's what's key with storytelling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that I thought of while you were speaking before was just around the CMO and CTO relationship, obviously in the context of customer experience. That's a really important relationship to get right. Sometimes the intentions at that point and a bit of ego ownership challenges. How do you see that relationship and how do they get it right?
So super. And by the way, back to storytelling, this is personal to me. So both my brother and I studied computer science at university. I ended up being a CMO and in the marketing track. He ended up being a CIO and on the IT track. So come Sunday lunches at our place, there's always a fun debate, right? Because, he's always talking about the CMOs that he's worked with coming to him with crazy projects and not understanding the technology. And then I always tell him, well, usually many of the CIOs I've worked with or that I know our customers work with are usually there trying to follow their processes. It's all about uptime and transparency of the systems. And I'm like, we need to deliver something that the customer cares about. And I want this on the website. And so it's quite fascinating, right? So I think for me, like all good relationships, you have to think of them empathetically from both sides, right? The CIO is there to try to minimize risk and keep all the systems going for an organization. That's everything from the finance department to the call center to the phone lines to maybe even badge security. And then the CMO is there to drive growth and be innovative and make sure that we can introduce all these new channels. Like there might be a new app they want to deliver, right? So they're kind of diametrically opposite, right? So I think you need to start off from that and be empathetic. I think where I encourage many of the CMOs I talk to is to be able to do that well, you do need to understand the technology, right? Because it's like me asking you if you know how to build cars, and I say, well, I actually just want it to just levitate a little bit when I come out of the driveway, and you're like, well, nothing can do that, right? Whereas if you understand that the technology, if I just tell you I need it to go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, or I take a lot of right turns, and the same happens with technology. I think as a marketer, CMO, if you know that you want to be able to deliver something and have some understanding of the realm of what's possible, it's going to be much easier for you to have a conversation and make sure your asks are clear. And then vice versa, when your CIO or CTO gives you back what they're planning, you can also challenge if it's not what you asked for. Or if, for example, we encourage a lot of our CMOs and marketers to come to our conferences, they might come in and see examples of what's possible. If they then go back and their CIO says that's not possible, well, then they can say, well, I just saw that at the Salesforce World Tour, or I just saw that at Dreamforce, and it wasn't just them, there was a customer. So I think it's important that you're empathetic, but you work on understanding. And I say the same for the CIOs and the IT leaders, like what is marketing trying to achieve? Because they themselves want to be innovative, but they're a little bit more constrained because they might see something as a work and a cost versus an exciting new project to develop more revenue and growth. So I think that there's that. But just in summary, though, I think one last piece of advice I would say is that at the end of the day, it all starts with trust, right? And so if you don't make it adversarial, if the best folks that I've seen do this well, they come at it together, right? So if you both have the same goal, and sure, you might have different sides of the coin as to what needs to be delivered, but if you both, and hopefully they're a business goal, if you can both be aligned to that, then that's when I've seen it go really well. And it goes fast. You don't want to have to deal with internal conflict. It's the external competition that you want to focus on.
Yeah, so getting everyone on the same page. You really, like you say, you don't want to be fighting against each other. You want to be taking on competitors. And now I want to look forward to what a great CMO in the future might look like.
Well, this is a fascinating one because I'm always asked this question, but I think in the last 6 months it's changed. I would say going back 12 months, I was pushing for that the marketing department absolutely needs skills in technology, and not just, the simple stuff like, digital media, like LinkedIn, Google, like stuff like that. That's the performance marketing side. But actually understanding CDPs, or what we call ours data cloud, right? So that you can understand segmentation, understanding tools that can help you automate a lot of tasks. And what I see many times in departments is like there's a person that knows how to do this, but like no one else knows, which just bottlenecks everything. It means you can't even get a campaign out because there's only one team that knows how to segment your existing CRM and send an email out. Now that's never great for any process, right? So I think having a general build up and understanding of the technology, and it's changed quite a lot. Like to tell the story, when I came back from San Francisco, where I'd been almost 10 years working in Silicon Valley, I was quite amazed that I came back and most of the people in marketing, most of the CMOs were still really only the owners of the billboards and the 30-second ads on TV and maybe the sports stadium sponsorship. And I was like, well, who owns the website and who's considering the customer journeys and who's owning segmentation? And what are you doing to reduce the cost of every click that you have on your paid media strategy? And a lot of that had been outsourced to agencies, and the technology side even further down, potentially to the IT department. And so I really think that, it's improved a little bit over the last year or two, I would say, but there's a long way to go, especially when I travel around the region and around the globe. Like if you go to India or even if you go to Singapore, those folks in marketing roles are way more sophisticated, and they're more technical.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought it was all going. You had to be more technical. You had to understand the technology. I think what's changed in the last 6 months, and I know we're going to talk about AI a little bit later on, but with the rise of generative AI and now agentic AI, a lot of what required, and it's still early days, I would say, but a lot of what required technical know-how. So, for example, a programmer that needed to understand, and I learned all these things back in the uni days, like C or Java. Now, fast forward, and it's still not there completely, but in the future, you won't actually need to know the programming language. What you need to know is be able to articulate in a business requirement in natural language what you need, and it will be possible for that to be generated for you. Now, so that means actually you don't necessarily need the technical skill, but you need the critical thinking and the ability to articulate the problems and what you have. Back to my analogy of don't ask the IT department to build your levitating car. You need to be able to articulate what you need, and it can't just be in general terms. You need to be quite specific for it to work. And so I've started to change my tune. Now, I don't know if this will pan out or not, but you may not. And, by the way, I have children as well, and you're always trying to work out where you steer them. I think it can never hurt if you know programming languages or complex marketing systems. But I think increasingly you may not need to know the tool, but you need to know how to describe what you need in the tool quite well, which, by the way, humans aren't that good at even talking to other humans, let alone to a system. Yeah. But I think that, and being able to understand if it's doing it and being creative to be able to innovate and cycle on it, is going to be the key skill for everyone in the department. So that's number one. And then number two, when you have people that are leveraging that technology in a marketing department, and when you have digital workers, which is a new concept, as a CMO, you're going to need to know how to run an organization that has humans, that has digital workers, and how do you ask for more? Because previously it was, hey, well, I'm not going to ask for more on a Saturday because people are off on a weekend. But now on a Friday, you could ask a digital worker to keep doing something over a weekend, potentially. Yeah. But then there's all these questions we haven't answered. So what does that mean? What if the worker has a question or needs your input on the weekend? Do you wait till the Monday? Or come the Monday, do you now have more work to respond to the agent? Or can the agent work with another agent? All these questions are coming to mind. So I guess with all of that means that we're in a moment of change. And so you need to be agile and resilient and curious to what's next.
It's fascinating. It's really interesting to see where it goes. You've got almost the traditional storytelling skills like you were talking about, and then you've got the systematic thinking and understanding systems, and they're very different skill sets. And then I guess with AI, you've got this whole new world of how to work with general intelligence and how to brief a digital agent. That's really interesting. That's almost another skill set.
It is.
Talking to robots. So, we might not have thought about that years ago, but you've almost got three areas. So, yeah, it's really, really becoming interesting and even broader, isn't it?
100%, 100%. So I don't want to jump the gun, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and we at Salesforce, I feel, are pioneering this way and helping people cross the chasm. And to steal that analogy, in fact, I'll tell you a story we just had last week. We brought out renowned author Jeffrey Moore. He's the author of the book Crossing the Chasm, and I think that was written 30 years ago, right? And now he's written subsequent books. But basically, to cut a long story short, he was advocating for when you have such radical change, moments like this, he kind of divided the world into 4 quadrants. And I'm probably going to do this not justice. So Jeffrey, if he ever watches this, please don't blame me that I mess it up. But there's basically, to simplify, like in the top right-hand quadrant are the people that are there, and it's called like the performance zone, sorry, that are there to run the business. So like they're your salespeople, your CEO, and they like very much like the numbers. And if it misses, they're going to miss the quarterly earnings, all these things, right? And supporting them underneath is usually people like marketing, customer service, core productivity. They underpin that. Those people don't really want radical change, right? They're there to ensure that the trains are moving on time, that they're hitting the numbers. If any wild idea comes off, they'll quickly try to shut it down because you're distracting. You are a distraction, right? On the left, though, on the bottom left is the incubation zone. You need to have either a department or a team that's thinking about net new ideas. And that department doesn't care about meeting the quarter or any numbers. And in fact, they might actually be a huge cost center because they're like spending money to tinker and test. But they're necessary to the one above, which is digital or just transformation. So you can't have transformation if you don't have that incubation zone because you don't have anyone to push for it. But transformation is usually the opposite of what the performance and productivity people want. So we're at this, and that's why we brought him out, because we meet with a lot of customers. The CEO might say that they want transformation, but then all the people that report to the CEO have their metrics and things that they don't, they're terrified that if they mess them up, they'll lose their job. Yeah. And so you can't actually have both at the same time. You need to have, and this is why VCs and startups work the way they do, right? So startups usually have really no one telling them no, right? As long as they have money to keep going. Yeah. But the way that venture capital firms in Silicon Valley have kept them on a leash, so to speak, is that their payments are milestones. So when you get to this many customers, or when you've got to this much velocity, or you've launched the product, come back and we'll raise more money and we'll validate to the market that your idea was any good. And if it's not, we shut it down pretty much, right? And that's why there's Series A funding, B funding, C. And this is the world that I was quite used to in Silicon Valley. Coming here to the market locally, yes, in the tech sector, we have a bit of that. But in your traditional, your big 4 banks, insurance, the airlines, they don't really think like this at all. Yeah. So when a new transformative technology like Gen AI and agents comes along, it requires some net new thinking and new people as well.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, let's talk about AI. We've been alluding
dancing around it.
But every meetings, every time we talk, AI is coming up, and obviously, at Salesforce, there's massive things happening in AI with Agent Force, and I guess you guys are talking about it all the time, no doubt. So, how are you seeing it, and what advice are you giving to CMOs on how they approach it?
Yeah, so I guess I need to back up a little bit first. So Salesforce has been in the AI space for a decade. And so many people think that this all came about in the last 12 months and it's all new. But in fact, we've actually been delivering features within the whole platform at scale across all of our major clouds. And in fact, now almost 2 trillion predictions are made every single week on the Salesforce platform. So to give you an example of that, in marketing, many folks are familiar with Marketing Cloud. You can, have a whole journey where emails and SMSs need to go out. We introduced a feature many years ago, which was called send time optimization. Previously, people used to work out, I'm going to schedule this email for 11 a.m. and hope that it hits Perth and Melbourne at the right times. That's gone away. And AI basically works out down to the individual the best time to send that email for when they're going to open it based on historical information. So that's an example of predictive AI. And we've been doing that for quite a long time. And it's delivering immense value for all of our customers. I would say the next wave that came along was the generative wave. And we saw that probably 12 to 18 months ago, obviously explode with ChatGPT and some of these open systems, and then there were other tools like co-pilots that came along. Those tools were really more designed and aimed at the individual to give them productivity, right? So help me create this email, make this social post easier, which is amazing, right? It's a huge advancement, right? A technology that can now talk like a human or sound like a human. A bit of a check in history as where a lot of that text came from and the video came from, right? Maybe just vacuumed up from across the web without asking for permission, but we won't go there because that was other companies' responsibilities, not at Salesforce. But we brought some of that into our platform, and it had somewhat limited success because it still requires the individual to firstly remember to use it. There's so many tools now, right? Yeah. And then when they use it, they're going to get some benefit. But the missing link was that if I ask you to generate an email, maybe in your personal life, it's fine to use just normal English language because you don't have anything proprietary you need to say. So an email to invite customers, to invite guests to your house for a dinner party, it can come up with something amazing. If you want to flip that, though, to a company that wants to invite customers to a launch of a product, you're going to want to talk about your industry, what's important to them, maybe what the customer's done with you before or what you've released. And that's where the real distinction came in what Salesforce was doing, in that you need to ground that. And that's a technical term, but basically give it the knowledge of the data that you already have. And so it's much like trying to put an intern in front of a computer and say, hey, start creating emails. They have no clue because they haven't worked with a company long enough, right? So they usually have to look at someone and have to be given access to systems to be able to pull this information. Someone has to review it. And this is where the third wave of technology that it's an extension of generative AI, but it is quite different in that, and that's agentic technology or agents, is that it can not only use the generative large language models, it can ground it in data. And we have a lot of data for our customers on the CRM data that we have. We also pull it in through systems like MuleSoft and Data Cloud, if you might have it in other places. But then you add a layer of reasoning. And so what makes something go from just being a productivity tool to a tool that can run and be a digital worker is the whole reasoning part of it. So now if you give the task of an agent to not just create an email, but actually create a campaign to send these emails for this activity, it could actually go and understand, well, who do I need to send that to? Get the segment, pull it out from the CRM. Okay, based on that, who do I want to target and what do I want to say? Do I want to mention that they've been recently to another event or that they've owned this product? Okay, it goes off and does this all without human interaction. Then it can actually send it and can test, is this being opened? Are people opening the email? So, of course, you can put guardrails at any step if you're uncomfortable, right? So, for example, one of our customers is Gucci. They're not sending direct emails from an agent to a high net worth individual without a human in the loop, right? But if you're a transactional company, you're selling $1 widgets on the internet, that's totally fine, right? So I think what you need, though, is a system that can do all of that. And that's what Agentforce was for us at Salesforce, a system where you can build an agent, you can train it or point it to the information it needs to have access to. You give it the ability to take action. So no different to if you have a person in a call center, you need to give them access to systems to make changes to appointment times, going back to Fisher and Paykel. You need to be able to make the change as well and then report it back to the driver or the technician. You need to give it that. And then, of course, you give it some guardrails. What don't you want it to do? And when do you want to bring in the human? When you bring and deliver all that, you've actually created a digital worker. Yeah. And a digital worker, like we mentioned before, is a brand new concept. And looping it all the way back to when you open, you asked me the challenges of a CMO and businesses. Many businesses today, if you think about it, across industries, healthcare, they can't hire enough doctors and nurses to do the tasks we have. And so what that means is when you go to the doctor, they might have 30 minutes with you, and then you're given some terse notes to go and follow or go to the chemist and do this for the next few weeks. But there's no follow-up. There's no one on the system that calls you up, checks if you've done it, have you taken the medicine, is it working, until the next meeting. And God forbid if you have to go to a specialist, you're waiting much longer. Yeah. Same in other industries like airlines, right? They can't hire thousands of people to help you change all your flights at the level that maybe a platinum one, a Qantas gets, because it's not economical, right? So we actually fundamentally have this capacity constraint on some jobs. We also know that businesses can't just hire more resources because of the cost. So a digital worker that doesn't take someone's job away, but actually can do the jobs that are repetitive and that companies don't have the capacity to do is a brand new concept. And so that's why I'm quite excited. I know a lot of people get freaked out when you start talking, is it going to take my job? And look, never say never. There might be some roles that are just not as needed. And mostly those were the mandatory, mundane, like answering reset password. Hopefully that wasn't your job, right? But if anything, what I'm seeing actually is those levels of inquiries are getting handled by the agent, allowing the human to really lean into the more high value work, dealing with the customer, giving them that personal touch. And that's what we all want. We all want to be treated like a very important customer, even if we only spend $20 with a company.
Exactly.
So I'll pause there because I know there's many directions we can go, but it's a really exciting time.
Yeah. And are you seeing you're obviously seeing some great examples of what companies are actually using like these agents in their business, these digital agents? Have you seen any have some really great impacts already?
Yeah, look, I'm going to just start off with us at Salesforce. We like to call when we deploy our own technology, Salesforce on Salesforce. Many others call it Customer Zero. We have a couple of areas already that we've deployed it and getting amazing results. So we have on our website, help.salesforce.com, thousands of people from all over the world every day trying to ask questions. We've got a big platform, right? Trying to ask questions, understand how the tool works. And previously that was a knowledge search. You would search a knowledge base and you had to find the right article and, is this what I need, and try to follow the steps. We've deployed an agent right on that website so that you can actually go straight and get an answer. So think about summarizing millions and millions of pages of copy to give the customer a faster experience to get the answer they need. We also deployed it on our main homepage. So when you go to salesforce.com, you previously actually had the ability to talk to a chatbot, but the chatbot was pre-programmed. So if you asked it what a new product was and it didn't know what the product was, it basically said, I can't help you. Let me put you into a human. Now the agent actually is constantly searching our website. We are launching new product pages all the time and can immediately answer a question without any training. And this was all deployed, by the way. This might sound like multi-year projects. This was deployed in a matter of weeks because it's quite straightforward to set up an agent now on Agentforce, in that you tell it where you access the information, the actions it can take, which many of them are based on the Salesforce platform itself, and then you deploy it. So I wanted to start off there because we are drinking our own champagne to speak and have deployed it. By the way, that's external agents. We also have internal agents. So these are agents that employees will use. So we've launched agents in the HR department to help us with benefits. Our HR department, like any department, can't grow at the same pace as the company grows. We've got over 75,000 individuals. There's never enough HR people. And someone joins and now they can actually talk to an agent to say, well, I'm setting up my health insurance. Can I do this? Will I be able to do this? That used to be, again, a knowledge base with a little bit of automation with chatbots, but it couldn't actually take action to help you make a change. So if you wanted to change your provider or change your bank number, where you're going to get paid, or you're having some issue with logging your leave, it always went to a human. And usually that human was outsourced in another part of the world, which is not in your time zone, which is an awful experience. So that's how we've done it at Salesforce. So think external, internal. Some of our customers, I mentioned Fisher & Paykel before, they've already deployed one on their website where you can actually start interacting and asking questions about the appliances you've bought. So that's locally. Globally, we've got some pretty cool ones. So I'll share a story. One of them is Wiley. So many of you might know the book publisher. And so Wiley has this unique challenge, which, it's not that unique to all industries, but it's their sales are very much driven by when students go to school. And so right before the time that students go to school, they had to previously hire all these temp workers who didn't get much training to handle the incoming orders and service responses and then let them go.
Yeah.
Whereas now they can actually keep that fluctuation through the agent and maintain their employee base and not have to do these unorthodox acts of hiring, firing, and so forth. And now anyone can talk to the agent, have that conversation handled, and then only the most complicated, or if someone really has a special need, get actually directly to a human, which is incredible. I could go on, but it's really across industries. It's still very new, but we launched this product just under 2 months ago, and there's hundreds of customers all around the world that are already deploying this internally, externally, and I only see this growing and the scale as well of what they're using it for.
Yep. Yeah, it makes so much sense, as you say, because of those resource challenges. Like, humans on the planet can only do so much. But if you
Absolutely
train up these digital agents to do some of those, more manual tasks, it just frees you up to do the big ideas and make progress, which is really exciting. One of the other areas that I'm finding fascinating is, that we're all going to have personal agents at some stage. So you're going to have agents speaking to agents. What's the thinking around that in Salesforce at the moment? Obviously, you're focused on, you've got great agents and you're building that tech, but what's that going to look like for Salesforce? And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I think, as I mentioned before, when you start talking about agents, everyone seems to think there's like one, but actually there's going to be, for an individual at a company, they're going to have access to hundreds of agents. And they're basically like an individual at a company, right? You wouldn't have one person that does everything, right? You would have a benefits agent. You might have a sales development rep agent, which is what we're going to do to follow up on our leads. You might have someone that is helping coach you on storytelling, right? So there's going to be a lot of agents internally. Think about externally as well. You might have an agent on your website that specializes in customer service. You might have one that tries to sell to you, the one that tries to market to you. And so to flip it then, individuals themselves will have the ability, basically every technology they have, there is some agentic technology probably going to be bolted onto it, right? And so the question is, who wins that war, right? Is it Apple on your phone? Is it, Google, Gmail, that they will, but the reality is people will have some of these tools. I don't think they're all going to be as smart as the ones that businesses have, because, the person obviously has to pay for that, because in the old model of freemium, where it had access to all your data like Gmail and Hotmail, an agent needs to have access to a lot of your data to really know who you are, right? And so that's going to be an interesting space. We're not playing at that at Salesforce, but that's an interesting space. But you're right. So think of me as a CMO. If I'm deploying an agent that's talking to you as a customer and personalizing your interaction, you might actually try to set up an agent to talk to me so that you don't have to deal with, my emails or messages and so forth. And so when I talk to CMOs, this is a space that no one knows where it's going to go. But the reality is that you want your agent as a business to be very grounded on what you know about the customer, because if it's a little bit off, right? If I don't know that you did buy this or you don't like this, your agent, which is trained to only know the things that you like or don't like, will just drop that, right? It'll be like, oh, this is not important. We'll never get through to Justin. Yeah. And so I think it's super important that businesses start thinking about this technology. If they haven't, you're already late to the party. You start deploying, because when consumers start putting this up, think about the flip of this. A consumer now, and I've seen this as a real life example, there's technologies that say, I as a consumer don't want to pay this much for my insurance. Deploy this agent to bug my insurance company to bring down the cost. Your customer service for that insurance company is going to get slammed with the agent who doesn't need to sleep 24/7, is going to be relentless on trying to bring down Justin's insurance prices. Right? And so if you don't have your own agent that can deal with that customer, I think you're not going to be able to scale. So there's all these really interesting angles of where this is going. I think at a minimum, like I mentioned, you need to get going. You want to make it sure it's grounded on your data and it has your right tone. That's probably the last thing I would leave. The tone that you use for your agent, and that's something through Agentforce that you can personalize to a company. So Gucci trained their agents on lots of materials at Gucci, and they created the Gucci tone because it's it's a tone that their customers know and their staff are trained on. If your agent is speaking like a low brand, it's not going to come across right. And either you personally or your agent will probably detect that and say, well, this is not the kind of communication that I want to engage with as well. And we're talking a lot about text now and emails. but eventually it will be voice and beyond, which is something that we showcased in some of our recent conferences as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the interesting thing is, like I think, like I said, you can set up an agent really quickly, but if you want to train it to, really nail the tone and deliver on the brand, you probably have to put in a lot of effort. How much time a company spending crafting the agent and optimizing it to operate, where they should? A lot of companies sometimes with technology go, oh yeah, we've done it, put it on the website, but really you need to probably put in a lot of effort. How long is that actually taking companies to do?
Yeah, look, there's a bit of a myth, and our CEO likes to say, don't DIY AI. There was a bit of a myth that many companies had to build their own large language model. And so many, especially Australian companies, wanted to have their own proprietary large language model, all based on Australian material and so forth. By the way, these models now currently cost hundreds of millions of dollars and soon will cost billions of dollars and maybe hundreds of billions of dollars, because they're very specialized. Now, this is ensuring that it knows how to speak, right? You don't need to do that. Like we've been able to prove that with Agentforce, not necessary at all. In terms of training, look, I don't actually think that's probably not the right word. I think it's tuning and configuring, right? So for example, to deploy on our help website, we needed to let it point to all of the knowledge databases that we have, because they're going to be continually uploaded with new information. So it just needed access to that. You needed to be able to, and we call these topics, you need to be able to tell it what are the kinds of questions you want it to address. And by the way, these are sentences. So you're going to be asked questions about the Salesforce platform. Please answer those questions in a technical tone, right? That's literally the prompt that you have to give. And these are all prompts, by the way. You might then want to say, if you were and this is the one on our main website, you're taking leads. If someone is interested with talking with a sales rep, you need to be able to give it the action to be able to book a meeting. So you already need that action somewhere. It can't make it out of thin air. Luckily, on the Salesforce platform, you probably already have a workflow for when a lead comes in that a sales rep could actually pass it to another person. And so connecting the dots on that is not hard if you already have it. If you don't have it at all, probably a bit of a heavier lift. But the idea of agents is you're doing something that some of the humans were already doing. So hopefully you already have that infrastructure in place. So long story short, when we've been deploying this with some of our customers, we're talking anywhere from very simple use case of a day up to a couple of weeks. But obviously you want to monitor it after, like you would any system. But that's to the extent. Many companies are thinking this is a multi-year project, and I feel if they're going down that path, they're going to be left behind.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. And just to finish up, what are you personally most excited about in the world of marketing and CX? Obviously, AI is a big thing, so it's almost hard to not to answer that without AI. But what are you personally most excited about in the world of marketing?
Look, I think to draw a sort of summary and thread through many of the things I said, it's an exciting space. Obviously, we are all fueled with creativity. There's lots of creative people in our industry and in our country. So I always look forward to that, right? I'm always amazed at the creativity of my peers. And when I look at the work they're producing, that's number one. Number two, the talent that I see coming into the organization. I see many fresh-faced, eager individuals. Like, geez, everyone wants to be like a TikTok influencer now, which is basically marketing, right? So it's literally, I think, the number one job in the world at the moment. So, I always tell those people, we do work experience at Salesforce and we bring interns in, and I always ask them, what they want to be when they grow up. And many of them say that. And I'm like, you're in the right place, right? Let me teach you a few things. But absolutely coming back to where we were, I think changing, like literally fundamentally everything about the way a business operates with agents, and the opportunity we have at Salesforce with Agentforce to help companies of all shapes and sizes to deliver that is super exciting to me, because any process that you did before can have value that you can untrap, and you can, and this is, by the way, some advice I tell the team, my own team. Don't just rethink your existing process and try to do it with AI. Like, how are you making it better? Like you don't need to do it the same. You might have gone from step 1 to 10 by just going 1, 7, 10. You don't need 2 through 6 anymore, and 8 and 9. And so that's exciting, because I feel industries that are moving, that are growing, means that you've got a challenge to solve. And I always love a challenge. And that's the thing that I bring people around me that are looking to solve problems and change the world. And that, keeps you excited to wake up every morning and go and tackle that problem.
Well, Leandro, it's time to wrap up, unfortunately. I could speak all day. I really appreciate the perspective you've given us today, into the CMO world. Like, you just got a great viewpoint on it. So thanks so much for coming on and joining me.
Thank you, Justin. And as always, I appreciated the time. I know you came visit me in Salesforce Tower, Sydney. We'll have to get you back to show you some of this technology. And I welcome anyone to, come and visit one of our events or send me a note and I'll show them some of this technology.
Fantastic. Thanks for tuning in. Some amazing insights from a great marketing leader. If you found this insightful, make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button now, as we have some great episodes coming up. And if you have any questions or would like to chat, reach out to us at customersmarts.co. Catch you next time.